Hello everybody, it's Josie here with another reading wrap up for July. So this is going to be my part 3 reading wrap up, and this one is going to focus on some of the witchy, vampire-y books that I read this month, because I think, if you remember, in my TBR, I said I was kind of in a thriller, horror kind of mood this month, and yeah, I've read quite a few books that kind of fall into that vein, which some I've really loved, some not, so let's talk about them. So the first one I've got here is Madame Zero by Sarah Hall. This is a collection of short stories by Sarah Hall, and it was kind of described as, so on the top it said, these stories leave the reader unsettled, thrilled, and changed, and it's a remarkable collection of dark and sensuous stories located in sometimes conflicting landscapes. So I think I was expecting slightly more kind of horror-y, slightly more kind of weird, and to be fair, there were elements of sort of slight weirdness and slight unnerving in these stories, but a lot of them felt more like just really tiny domestic thriller vignettes. And so what I did appreciate, there was one that was actually, it's called Wilderness, which is set in South Africa on the garden route where I was raised, which was really cool. But again, that one is more about kind of 3 people and 2 of them in a relationship, and it's more sort of about a relationship. There's a couple of Mrs. Fox, the first story, is really cool. I really like that one. That's about I know I can't tell you, but anyway, Mrs. Fox is kind of cool. That was kind of what I was expecting. But the rest of the stories, I don't know. I wasn't, if I'm totally honest, I found them more sort of domestic thrillery than, or not even that thrillery, but sort of more domestic relationship type stories than particularly hugely kind of horror-y weirdness. So at the end of the day, I could only kind of give them a 3-star. I loved Mrs. Fox. I liked Wilderness. But yeah, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Then I read another collection of short stories, and it's The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. And so this one is a retelling of kind of fairy tales. And it's really interesting. So you've got different fairy tales, like the first one called The Bloody Chamber. That's like Bluebeard, where he gives his new wife like keys, and he says there's only one room you can't go into. Dun dun dun, that's like, why can she not go into that room? And obviously she does. And so this is definitely a lot more what I expected. Someone had also said that it had a slight feminist spin on the fairy tales, and it kind of, and I get what people are saying, because the girls aren't totally helpless in this, and actually in the first one, I can't tell you what happens, but anyway, so the girls aren't completely helpless and they can kind of save themselves in some parts. I've got a pink slip in here because my favourite story is The Lady of the House of Love. I really like that one. And yeah, that one's really, really good. It's slightly vampire-ish. You've got one called Puss in Boots. You've got The Tiger's Bride. This one I enjoyed more. I think not every single story. I think short story collections are difficult. Some of them are, like all of them are amazing, and you can kind of give it 4.5 stars. I would give this 3.5 to 4 stars. But yeah, this is a lot more what I expected it to be. A lot more horror. Yeah, definitely. Then the next one is this poor tattered cover, A Taste of Blood Wine by Frida Warrington. And I hauled this a few months ago. Frida Warrington, I adore. 2 of my favourite books by her are it's a duology, and it's called Pagan Moon and Dark Cathedral, and that one is about witches, and this series, this is the first in a series, is about vampires. So again, you can see it's a hefty old book, but to be fair, you can get through this really quickly, it being kind of a horror vampire novel. What I would say is it's not a lot of, to me at least, very overt kind of horror. So it focuses on, you've got this girl, I'm trying to remember her name, which is really bad. So the vampire's called Karl von Wultendorf, which is fun. So this is set in Austria, by the way, and Charlotte is, I remember now, Charlotte is the character's name, and she is one of 3 sisters. She's quite shy, quite introverted. She's not really that interested in kind of entering into society and finding a husband. Her sisters kind of tease her a bit for it, but she kind of helps her father with his sort of genetic type research. She's quite happy to hide away and do that. And but her sisters have kind of, in the beginning of the book, gotten her out. She's doing some parties, and at this one party, one of her sisters meets Carl. And her sister becomes quite infatuated with Carl because he's very handsome, very mysterious. But Carl and Charlotte kind of lock eyes, and there's a spark between them. And Carl then comes to Charlotte's house where she lives with her father, and he says he's interested in her father's research and he wants to find out more, so he wants to spend some time there. And then, of course, Carl and Charlotte kind of get to know each other. What I would say about this is it's incredible insta-love. I mean, it literally is, wow. Saw them across the room and that was it kind of thing. I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying Carl's a vampire. And then you kind of got your twists and turns after that with Carl and Charlotte. It was fun. Was it the best vampire book I've ever read? No. Will I continue with the series? I don't know. I don't think so. I kind of liked while it lasted. I thought there were some bits that were a little bit long, maybe didn't necessarily need to be in there. Like I said, the relationship between Carl and Charlotte was very quick. At least in my view, it just kind of happened like that. Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of fun while I was reading it. So it's definitely 3 stars. It wasn't terrible. I don't know. I don't know if I want to kind of continue. There are some of the other books, the synopses sound really good, so I'm kind of dithering whether or not to read them. But based on this one, I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, maybe some other characters in the series. I believe there's other characters within the series and they focus differently, so maybe that would be more interesting. But based on this one, yeah, 3.5 stars for the sheer fun kind of vampire romance aspect of it. But it wasn't great. The next one, speaking of vampires, is this one over here. Romeo, Juliet, and vampires. I love this. This is just so much bloody fun. So it's basically a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, but with vampires. So in this one, Juliet's family, the Capulets, are a very powerful vampire family. And Romeo's family, the Montagues, kind of hunt them down. So they're basically like the vampire hunters. And it kind of follows the same sort of storyline. So if you know Romeo and Juliet, there's a big party at the Capulet mansion. Romeo is initially in love with one of Juliet's cousins, Rosaline, so he wants to sneak into the party with his men. And then he sees Juliet, speaking of insta love, and he falls instantly in love with Juliet. I don't know why I forgive it for Shakespeare. But it's just, I mean, I love Romeo and Juliet. I love the film adaptation that Baz Luhrmann did. It's probably my favorite film of all time, just because it's gorgeous, that adaptation. But yeah, I do love this. Yeah, so as you can imagine, and the thing with this one is that Juliet is about to turn 16, and on her 16th birthday, she's actually not a fully fledged vampire yet. On her 16th birthday, she has to perform the blood ritual and become a vampire. And it's just a whole lot of fun. And I had a real huge amount of fun reading this. I loved it. So this is 4.5 star read for me, because I loved it. I really did. And I don't know what else to say about that. Don't know what it says about my reading taste, but yeah, it was a fun time. And then the next one is this one over here, is The Witches of the East End. So this I actually originally saw, and this is the tie-in for the show as a TV show. I hadn't read the book, and then I found this in a charity shop, and I thought, what the hell, I'll get it and read it. And it's basically, it kind of gives me very much sort of practical magic vibes. You've got a family of witches, so you've got a mother and daughters, and they have magical powers. In the beginning, they've been told that they shouldn't really be using their magical powers, so again, a bit like Charmed, but then they start using them. Each sister starts using them in different ways, and the mother starts using them as well, which is fun. And there's different, like, one of the sisters works in a library, and she starts helping people kind of come to her with sort of problems they have, and she gives them kind of like charms and spells and that. And then you've also got this plot of one of the sisters is getting married, and it becomes apparent, I'm not giving this away, like right in the beginning of the book, that she also is quite infatuated with her fiance's brother, who she's having an affair with, essentially. So you've kind of got that storyline going, and that is interesting in terms of, you know, what this brother's a little mysterious, what's going on with his family, and you know, there's a big, I'm obviously not going to tell you, but there's some reveals and stuff in the end that are lots of fun. What I loved about the mythology of the witches in this is that they are Norse witches. So you've got Freya, which is such a beautiful name, and it all centers around, and this particularly at the end of the book, they start to explain this, it's kind of centers around Norse mythology, and then there's something that happens in the end, and there is another book, so this is a series. I believe there's more than another book, and honestly, I do think I'm going to try and get my hands on, particularly if I can get them on secondhand, is read the rest of, or certainly the next book in the series, because I kind of want to know what happens after this one ends. So again, I had a good time reading this. I thought it was fun. I think I liked it more than the TV show in the sense that the TV show was really focused on the kind of the relationship aspect. And this, you get more of kind of the witchy and the mythology, because maybe I just wasn't paying attention. I didn't pick up any of the kind of Norse bits in the TV show. I think they kind of focused more on kind of it being about relationship and that. So yeah, I kind of enjoyed this. I liked the characters. I found them fun. And yeah, it was a good time. So again, like a 3.5 to maybe even 4-star read, just for the sheer fun, witchy factor of reading it. And then the last book I'm going to talk about is this one over here. It's The Devils Mixtape by Mary Brossolino. And you can see I've tabbed this as well, which, like I said, for me at the moment is unusual. I don't tab books as much as I used to, but there were certain things that I wanted to tab in this book reading it, and I might actually reread this book at one point. So this book is kind of really hard to give a good synopsis of this book. So you've got essentially 3 different narratives that flow through. First one is Sally, who she performed, her and 2 of her friends, they went into the school and they shot their classmates. So she is the perpetrator of a school massacre, of a school shooting. And the very first chapter is her writing letters to her sister, Natasha. And so you get alternating chapters with these letters that Sally is writing. And in these letters, she starts off just talking about other evil women. So other women that have committed crimes, that have been serial killers. And it's fascinating because these are real stories, real people. And she's recounting that. And then as that narrative carries on throughout the book, she then talks about, you know, herself and what led up to this, I think they called it cobweb or spiderweb, their kind of mission, and why she did what she did. Well, in part, she explains why she did what she did. And there's certain elements that you find out, I don't want to say too much because you give some of it away. But so you've got that narrative. Then you've got a second narrative that's in the 50s, I think, with 2 women that, and they meet, they're both sort of hitchhiking across Australia. This is set in Australia. Mary is an Australian author. And they kind of meet and they sort of are hitching along, and they're telling each other kind of their stories, and alternating chapters again are between their different perspectives. It's really interesting. One of them, Amy, seems to be hiding something, and you'll find out at the end of the book what it is that she's hiding. And again, you kind of have this kind of natural born killers element. Sally talks about natural born killers in her letters to her sister and that kind of thing. And then you've got a third narrative that I suppose where the Devil's Mixtape comes from, is that Natasha is now in a band, and this band, they're called Hush, and they're on a tour. And the third narrative is actually a journalist who is kind of touring with this band and getting to interview them, and you hear about the band, you hear about the band members, and you hear about their stories, and they're all so they're connected, but you've got to kind of pay attention, and you've got to be a bit patient and realize how these all kind of mingle and connect. And I found this incredibly thought-provoking. The whole idea, again, of women who are evil, women who kill, it's not something that is, I think like 99% of serial killers are male, so is a very small fraction, you know, what drives someone to do it, kind of the aftermath. Also this band, I really, you know, I could read a whole book actually about the band, Hush. I would have loved just to read about them. It's really interesting, their stories. The lead singer, which I loved, so if you're looking for some rep, the lead singer is actually a transgender woman, which I loved, and that's actually said on the page. And there's some queer characters, so I really loved that as well, really appreciated that in the narrative. It just, the band really stands for positivity, for getting through tough times, for kind of two fingers up to people that tell you what you need to do, who you need to be, kind of really being yourself. It's so complex, it's so layered, it's so interesting. I'm definitely going to read it again, just talking about it now. And it is a fascinating story. I really enjoyed it. This is like, again, 4.5, 5-star read for me this month. It's like totally different to Wandering Wild, but really, really liked it. And I've actually got another of Mary Brossolino's books, and she wrote a series called The Wolf House. Or The House of Wolves, Wolf House. And I've got the first book in that series, Origins and Overtures, and I'm actually planning to read that post-haste because I want to read more of her work. It's interesting. She has an interesting style, and I don't know if it's for everyone, if I'm totally honest, but I really liked it. And like I said, testament to the fact that it has tabs, and I'm going to be reading it again. So yeah. So that's the last book in this wrap up. Thank you for listening to me. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know what you think. And let me know, as always, any recommendations. And I will speak to you all again very soon. Bye-bye.